how did Keegan get to St. John's? What was like the St. John story? Who else was in the game?
This is one of the craziest recruiting stories ever. I was running our last tournament of the year. It's called Challenge Cup Tournament of Champions. We were playing at Quidnessett Country Club. I want to say it was a few days before, people made commitments, official commitments on signing day. And my dad was with Frank Dobby, who was a coach at St. John's, at a college tournament. My dad was good friends with him. They traded players a little bit here and there. Like a kid who was looking for something different would go to my dad. My dad would send a kid his way. And so my father was on the phone with me. He's like, "How's it going today?" I said, "It's a typical New England day for November." I said, "The conditions aren't great." He's like, he goes, "Hey, Coach Dobby was wanting to talk to you for a minute." And so I get on the phone with him. I'm like, "Hey, Frank, how's it going?" He's like, "You got anybody hanging around? I got one spot left." He goes, I really could use somebody." He goes, "But, it's got to be somebody good." And I'm like, I said, unbelievably, I said, this guy's still hanging around. I said, "His name's Keegan Bradley." I said, "He's Curran's teammate." And I said, his family has a good lineage. I told him about his aunt. And I'm like, I think this guy's going to be something special. I'm like, I said he could be. And Frank had a lot of success at St. John's. He had Andrew Savoda, who was, still a very good player, who, has toiled on the Corn Ferry Tour and has really, won quite a few tournaments, and kind of moved into a different portion of his career around here. But St. John's was around the top 100 team, sometimes in the 80s, 90s, which is huge for Division I golf in the Northeast corridor. So he's like, so his question to me was this simple. He goes, "What did he shoot today?" I said, "He shot an easy 68. He goes, "Par 72? I'm like, "Yeah." And then his most important question was, "What did Curran shoot? Did Curran play? What did he shoot?" Because he knew who Curran was. And I said, "Yes, Curran played. He shot 70. And he said, "Tell Keegan I'm going to be calling him," he said, "over the next day or two." And he goes, "We'll meet halfway between Hopkinton," and I think Frank was living maybe in Greenwich at the time. And he said, "And I'm going to offer him a full." So the way Frank did it was he offered him full tuition. So all the kids on his team received full tuition. And then the kids usually lived in a golf house as opposed to on campus, so they didn't have to spend a ton of money. So kids were essentially he only had 7 on his roster, and essentially all 7 kids would go to school and they wouldn't have to pay really much of anything, maybe a few bucks to be living in the golf house per se. And 1 week later, they met up in some Irish pub, and it was a done deal. And he was going to St. John's. It was that simple.
Yeah,
So
so I mean, you mentioned his aunt's a Hall of Famer, obviously, in the LPGA Tour and has a great lineage. Dad's a head pro. He had great scores. How is he still on the shelf and not recruited?
Uh, so at the time, he hadn't made much noise. Like he hadn't made noise at a national level. Tom Drennan from URI he was in the game. He was still interested in him, but he certainly wasn't going to offer him a full. And Tom. I mean, listen. As soon as Frank heard about who he was, and I mean, I think Frank trusted. He saw what my dad did in a very short period of time with the kids that were on his team down at school, and you know, he knew who a lot of our players were, and I think he just trusted, my evaluation of like what kids might be around. Because truth be told, I mean, there really was nobody else. I mean, there might have been a few other people that were kicking the tires with him, but certainly nobody was going to offer him what Frank offered him. I mean, and he was the first guy that really. I mean, listen, I'm the one who believed in him, right? I guess, but he's the one who believed in me, right? And he got an incredibly pleasant surprise. I mean, the first year he played as a freshman, he was in the hunt in every single tournament. He won a tournament, and he, he really. That was the beginning of him learning how to feel comfortable, not only feel comfortable in the environment of trying to chase down a win, but it was like a drug to him. He liked being in that environment. And let's be real, how many people really, I mean, you watch golf, how many guys are comfortable in that environment? How many people
Mm-hmm.
want to be in that environment? I mean, listen, I'm sure they all want to win, but the stress definitely cranks up, right, when you're trying to go out and win a tournament. And I mean, ultimately, it's not necessarily being put on you by somebody else. I mean, maybe you could argue Tiger put it on you because of some of the things that he did. And but in today's day and age, it's kind of really all about you yourself, right? It's about you going out and executing and you being able to win the battle with yourself is really what it is,
Yeah,
right? And
my hands have never been shaking in the Saturday and Sunday men's game, but I can assure you that when I've had to write my number down and put the ball on the bottom of the cup and know that everyone's looking and there's a scoreboard because I do compete a little. I
yeah,
mean, your hands shake. I mean, there's just no way around it. Like your hands shake, your stomach. You're doing neuro hacks to try to like get your brain waves to come down and like just be able to swing and breathe and swing the club. I mean, it's a whole new ball game. So, just out of curiosity, you because you've known Keegan since he's a kid. I know him from the interviews. I don't know Keegan, but
yeah.
you know Keegan. When he goes to St. John and he's a freshman, he's in every tournament, has a chance to win every tournament. Is he a chip on your shoulder type of kid, like day one? Like, does he feel like he owes you something, or is it something else?
So I think that when you say chip on your shoulder, you meaning that he feels like, hey, I'm better than what everybody thought I was, and like you.
I'm from Vermont. Nobody believed in me. The guy from St. John's
So
believed in
I
me.
don't, not initially because I think they realized that they were a little bit late to the dance, you know. And I mean, I think he expected that maybe some schools from New England would take notice of him a little bit better. But I don't think initially there was a chip. I think, listen, he had a crossroads after his freshman year. Curran wanted him to go to Vandy, and he called me up and he's like, "Hey, listen," he goes, "what do you think?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's not me, that's you." I said, "You got to figure that out for yourself." And he's like, "Well, I want to talk this through." I'm like, "No." I said, "You need to think of the reasons that Vandy's a good place for you." I said, "I think we already know what those would be." I said, "Then you need to, just as importantly, think about why St. John's is a good place to stay."
So behind the scenes, Keegan had a chance to basically now back in the day, he couldn't go and play right away. He had to sit out a year.
Yeah,
Those were the rules. But his best friend from high school, John Curran, who's playing at Vanderbilt, wants him to come. He had a good season. Coach probably wanted him as well.
yeah.
Put Curran up to recruiting him, so to speak, behind the scenes. And Keegan had the chance to go to transfer to Vanderbilt and play at Vanderbilt instead of St.
Sure.
John's after his freshman year.
Yeah, I was pretty realistic that that could have happened, and so make a long story short, he's trying to he really wants to talk to me about it, and then I keep trying to put him off because I want him to really put some thought into this because I think, listen, at first I think when anybody asks us, hey, you want to go do this, we don't think too much about what the potential ups and upside could be, or maybe the downside, or why it might be good to stay at St. John's. And I was totally stunned. I thought for sure, listen, you got your best friend going to a school. I thought for sure that he'd bail. And, my recommendation would be 100% stay right where you are. You're learning how to thrive in the environment to try to win golf tournaments. This guy, he believed in you, right? And you've got other kids that are coming to school now because of you, right? That want to start something special here. So like those would have been all the things that I said to him, but I didn't even need to say those things to him. I think he figured out pretty quickly, like, hey, if I stay here, there's a lot of good stuff that's going on here, and I'm going to get a chance to play in every single tournament. I feel like I'm capable of winning every tournament I stick a tee in the ground. And then I think, listen, once he got up to, by the time his career was over, he won, I think, 9 or 10 college tournaments, right? And I think he felt like he wasn't getting his just due when it came to recognition to get into some national tournaments. I know it took him a while to get into the Northeast Am. And I think, I think that's kind of, he felt like, no one's really taking recognition of the wins these wins, right? And I mean, when I had a radio show for a few years, and when I talked to him on the radio show, when he first had some success as a professional, which was very quickly, he alluded to the fact that listen, he said if I don't stay at St. John's, he goes, I don't know if I'm the golfer that I am. He said I learned how to be in the environment of
Mm.
having to execute and win golf tournaments. And, when it came time for him to actually have a chance to do that, he was able to do it, right? I mean, first he did it in a regular pro event, and then shortly thereafter he did it at the PGA Championship. I mean, and so goes the story, right? I mean, he's been solid as a rock. I mean, with the game that he has and the the ability that he has, guys like him, guys like Michael Thorbjornsen, all they need to do is be right with the putter like a couple weeks a year, and they can have realistic chances to win tournaments. I mean, they just hit the ball so well. They hit the ball far. They hit it. Their tee game is spot on, and there's the old saying that you drive for show and you putt for dough, but if you're not driving in the fairway, you're not going to be putting for anything, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, both those guys are exceptional drivers of the golf ball, which really sets you up to be successful. And if you have a good week putting, those guys are always going to be in the mix of whatever they're playing.